Anxiety is one of the most misunderstood experiences of the human mind because we treat it as a personal defect, something wrong with us, when in reality it is a perfectly natural response to a deeply unnatural way of living, a symptom of trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. And when you slow down enough to observe it rather than fight it, you may begin to notice that anxiety is not actually about what is happening now, but about what might happen later, because the anxious mind is always living in a future that does not exist, rehearsing disasters, imagining outcomes, and attempting to outsmart uncertainty. And this is exhausting because life does not move in straight lines or predictable patterns. It moves like water, and yet the modern individual has been taught to believe that security comes from certainty, from planning, from constant mental vigilance, as if thinking hard enough could guarantee safety. But this belief quietly creates tension because the truth is that no amount of thinking can remove uncertainty from existence, and the more desperately you try to secure the future, the more fragile the present becomes. And this is where anxiety tightens its grip, not because life is dangerous, but because the mind refuses to trust it, and so you live as if you are always about to fall off a cliff, even when you are standing safely on the ground. And what is fascinating is that the body responds to imagined danger almost the same way it responds to real danger. So the heart races, the breath shortens, the muscles tense, and suddenly you are fighting a threat that exists only as a thought. And this is not because you are weak, but because the human nervous system evolved to protect you from immediate physical danger, not from abstract futures created by language and imagination. And when you begin to see this, a subtle shift occurs, because you realize that anxiety is not an enemy to be defeated, but a signal that you are trying to live somewhere other than here. And this realization alone can soften its intensity, because instead of asking, how do I get rid of anxiety, you begin to ask, what am I running away from in this moment? And often the answer is surprisingly simple. You are running from uncertainty, from not knowing, from the raw openness of life as it is. And yet uncertainty is not a mistake in the design of reality. It is the very condition that makes life alive, creative, and spontaneous. Because if everything were predictable, existence would be mechanical, dead, and meaningless. And so the irony is that the very thing you are afraid of is the source of all possibility. And this is why I try to eliminate uncertainty creates suffering, because you're trying to remove the pulse from life itself. And when you see this clearly, you may begin to understand that anxiety is born from the illusion that you are a separate individual standing against the universe, responsible for holding everything together, as if the weight of existence rests on your shoulders. And this belief is unbearably heavy, because no individual is ever meant to carry such a burden. And yet this is exactly how we are trained to think, that you are alone, that you must manage your life perfectly, that mistakes are catastrophic, that failure defines you. And under this pressure, the mind becomes hypervigilant, scanning for threats, imagining worst-case scenarios, constantly preparing for impact. And the tragedy is that while you are busy preparing for life, you miss living it. And this is where the wisdom inspired by Alan Watts gently interrupts the pattern, because it asks a radical question. What if you are not separate from the process of life, but an expression of it? What if you are not a controller trapped inside a body, but an event happening within a vast, intelligent system that is unfolding long before you were born, and will continue long after you are gone? And when you begin to sense this, not just intellectually, but intuitively, something relaxes, because you realize that you were never meant to have absolute control, and the attempt to do so is what created anxiety in the first place. And this does not mean you become passive or careless. It means you stop confusing responsibility with omnipotence. You act where action is needed, and you let go where control is impossible. And this balance is the art of living, not a technique, not a rule, but a sensitivity to the moment. And anxiety fades not because life becomes safe, but because you stop demanding that it be safe before you allow yourself to be present. And this is perhaps the most liberating insight of all, that peace does not come from securing the future, but from trusting the present, because the present is the only place where life actually happens. And when you return to it again and again, gently, without judgment, you may notice that anxiety loses its grip, because it cannot survive in now. It needs. Imagine time to exist. And so, as the music flows beneath these words, let it remind you that life has a rhythm that cannot be rushed or controlled, only listened to. And when you listen deeply enough, you realize that you're not falling apart. You're falling into place. And the universe is not testing you. It is expressing itself through you, and you are allowed to breathe, to soften, to be uncertain, because uncertainty is not a threat. It is freedom disguised as fear, and the moment you stop running from it, you discover that there was never anything chasing you at all.